Coming up this week on the Markcast, we'll go ahead and call me John Nash, Russell Crowe here. This week, very fun episode this week. We are going to use our beautiful minds. We are discovering the magic formula for spring football. What does that all mean? Well, stick around. You'll find out. Fun episode this week. First and foremost, we have Bill Shea from The Athletic joining us. Bill is a TV ratings guru, tracking everything, especially spring and alternative football, all the way back, AAF, USFL, everything in between. We're getting Bill's thoughts on the sustainability of the XFL, especially with the USFL on the horizon. What is the magic formula, the holy grail for spring football?
Networks and investors have believed for a long, long time that it's possible to challenge the NFL or to find the magic formula to make it work in springtime. People are convinced, they're chasing this holy grail. And, in the legend, the holy grail was found, and in Hollywood, Indiana Jones found it and then lost it. I think it can be done.
Then this is an exciting one. Josh Lewin, you know him as the host of the XFL Week in Review show, contributor for XFL.com. Sitting down with Josh, really candid thoughts. What does Josh think about the XFL so far? Is he impressed with everything year one?
You want it to just, really dazzle, and just take over the world. And it hasn't done that. To me, this is all kind of like in beta, as they say on Shark Tank, where it's like, things are in development. To me, it's like, when a restaurant opens, what they call a soft open almost, right? It's like the menu's not fully formed and it's not going to be what it's going to be, but you want to get the restaurant open and get people eating the food.
And then Eric Eager of Sumer Sports joining us. Eric was with us for the XFL kickoff. We are breaking down all the football. We do talk football on here as well. All the football of XFL Week 8, previewing all 4 weeks matchups.
I've been really enjoying the league. I made a comment on Twitter today that every XFL game right now has a total this week of above 40, which I feel like is a great sign for the league right now.
And then I sat around the other day, I thought, what the heck is Mathew Sexton doing right now? Mathew Sexton of your Vegas Vipers, formerly of the Spring League, the Aviators, or the Hughes, as I prefer to call them. Catching up with Mathew Sexton here. Vipers, big game this weekend against the Battlehawks. And then for all you CFL fans out there, we have head coach Rick Campbell, Coach Rick of America's CFL team, the BC Lions, catching up with Rick. I never had Rick on the show. I said, what the heck is he working on this week? Let's chat. Should be a good show as always. Like and subscribe. Take care. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Kind of a busy week here, bouncing around, recording all these interviews out of order. Lots of events this week. We have Paxton Lynch switching teams. We talked earlier this week about Kurt Benkert, all those injuries with Andy Murray on our Monday morning live stream. I want to get right to the episode this week. Thank you all so much. A really loaded show, a little philosophical again, as we like to get on here. The sustainability of spring football, what is going on, USFL on the horizon, XFL ratings, sustainability, all these kinds of things I like to get into on here. Plus, real football talk. We're going to break down all of that stuff. Programming note, before I let you go, we will be out of town next week, going to be in Vegas for my wife Dorothy's spring break. So Andy Murray and I's normal What Did We Learn episode, that's going to be Tuesday morning. I'll do it from the Luxor. We fly out Monday. So Tuesday morning, there's not going to be the Monday morning live stream. We'll do it Tuesday morning. Andy and I, probably 8 a.m., 8:30 Pacific, like we have been doing. Then next Friday's episode is going to be a special live episode. Still working on all the details, trying to finalize all the guests. Like I said, good to be in Vegas, going to have trouble kind of pre-recording everything like I normally do. So going to get together a big gang. We're going to do kind of a USFL weekend kickoff preview. Not going to be in Birmingham this year. We're traveling, going to be in Vegas and everything else. So not going to be Birmingham, not going to be in Memphis, but we will have a fun show for you, talking XFL Week 9, doing the USFL, all that stuff. So look forward to that. I'm going to try to do it live around the time the episode normally goes on, but it'll be Friday morning. We're going to have a big round table, come hang out, ask questions. Should be a good time preparing, prepping for the USFL kickoff, XFL, everything else. So I hope you guys enjoy. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoy Bill Shea today. Really extended thoughts with Bill. Really kind of deep diving into all of that. Bill is a wealth of knowledge. Really appreciate him coming on. Josh Lewin, making the time. I hope you guys enjoy that. I know we all I know Mike Mitchell's a big fan as well. Josh's weekly XFL Week in Review show. I like getting, Josh really kind of out of that element, right? A little more candid talking. What does Josh think about everything? Josh, very open. I was surprised, kind of just how open and honest Josh was. I think it's like we are on here. I think it's okay to be a little critical. What do we look forward to here with things changing with the XFL approaching season 2? So really appreciate that. Eric Eager, as always, making time to come on with Sumer Sports. And I thought it was fun. Mathew Sexton, hope you guys enjoyed that interview. Him riding home from practice there in Arlington. That's a fun one. And then Rick Campbell, always trying to get you guys some CFL talk as well. So like and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I'll check back in at the end. Take care. Well, I'm excited today. We have Bill Shea, and I think there's going to be a cat popping around here at some point with the Athletic here. We are talking, XFL. We're week 8. We have TV ratings. Could be better. Could be worse. Been reading Bill's stuff on the Athletic for a few weeks now, talking the new XFL. Bill, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So we live in this echo chamber that's known as like alt football Twitter and, all the Reddits and everything else. I like getting outside perspectives on here. Me as an alt football fan, how should I feel approaching XFL Week 8 right now?
Well, that's a great question because I think network executives and league executives are asking themselves the same thing. And the reason I say that is because the television industry has changed so radically in recent years, gradually, and then all of a sudden. The proliferation of cable and other entertainment options, the internet, social media, and then the rise of streaming and the advent of smartphones over the last 10, 15 years has really accelerated the way things have changed. And our contextual understanding in general has been slow to catch up. Shows that used to average 30 million people, well, that doesn't exist really outside of the NFL anymore. So trying to get a bead on exactly, what people should be thinking around XFL or USFL numbers in the spring is it's hard to gauge. I'm not particularly surprised by the numbers I have seen. The two rival spring leagues have a little bit different sort of media footprints. And one is owned by a network and the other one is owned by a third party. And what it really comes down to, and the thing not to lose sight of is, we see the numbers, we see all the comparisons to things. But what we don't know is what are the internal success metrics for the XFL, for Fox, for NBC, for the network TV partners. It's these football leagues, spring football leagues, are part of a wider strategic programming plan for the networks. And that's really what it comes down to, and the survivability of these networks. These games aren't going to get 5, 10, 15 million viewers. Maybe one day championship games, if these things really take off, they could do that. But they don't need to do that at this point. The cost structures, the rights arrangements and things like that are really what matters. These are lineup fillers for the networks. And what the equation ultimately is, if the network thinks it can get the same eyeballs and ad rates for something cheaper, well, then they'll put something cheaper on there, unless there's some other obligation or goal that they have. And if not, they'll stick with it for the money and the contracts that they have laid out. That all being said, the numbers aren't exactly blowing up right now. Week 7's average, I think, for the XFL was around 350,000. You had a Friday night game, Seattle and Arlington on FX, which is not the ideal landing spot for any sort of sport at this point. And it was up against college basketball, one of the Final Fours. So you got 177,000 average on FX. You've had games end late at night. They're kind of, they're Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Fans, NFL fans by now are used to knowing when and where their teams are playing. The NFL has carved out it's footholds on Thursday night football and Monday night and, in the weekends. XFL and USFL, for that matter, don't have that sort of public awareness. And what also doesn't help is because the way things have changed with streaming and cable and satellite and all that, it's harder to get what's called organic discovery, which is when you're just flipping channels and you're like, oh, hey, what's this thing? I haven't seen this. I'll watch. Oh, this is kind of cool. I'll come back to this. Something I'll regularly watch. When you're not in a consistent slot, it's hard to build that through organic discovery. And it's not just XFL or USFL that have that problem. It's a lot of content anymore because we have so many channels. We have so many streaming services. The push and pull for our eyeballs and our wallets is bigger than it's ever been. So it's a bigger struggle than ever. There are also advantages, for starting a football league now. Or restarting a football league. And in the case of these two leagues, is you have options. There are more options to put your product, and you don't have to, be on ABC and go to the upfronts each spring and hope somebody's willing to pay a bunch of money for airtime during your broadcasts. So it's sort of a yin and a yang. But week to week, it's hard to judge. I did a mid-season report on the XFL's numbers. They were not great, particularly compared to the past couple of versions of this league. They rebounded a little bit in the following weeks. Getting off of FX helps. Having games on, the big networks, the national broadcast channels like ABC, that absolutely helps. But this past weekend, it's like pickleball at noon on ESPN had 670,000 viewers. The top XFL game later on Sunday afternoon, 502,000. And that got that could have been bigger if it wasn't facing the women's Final Four, which got 10 million viewers for an all-time record. But there's some more ABC games coming up. Week 9 and 10, I think, have one each. There's some ESPN games. I think they're done with FX, which is good. I don't know if they'll ever return to FX. They may want to avoid that in the future. But really for the networks too, these are opportunities to play around with these football properties and find a place that maybe works and that they settle in to somewhere. But it's a busy, chaotic time in the TV industry. And to me, it's totally fascinating that we'll have two rival spring leagues overlapping this year. And I'm a huge sucker for all alternative football. I played minor league arena football many years ago. And I've always, I loved the original USFL 40 years ago. And on all of the efforts that have happened since to try to make this work. And I think now is probably the most opportune time to try to make it work. It's just who's going to survive, and the tolerance for loss, financial losses until you reach a point where you're either break even or maybe making a little bit of money. But with the chaos in the TV industry, it's really too hard to predict, especially with these wild numbers these leagues get, what's going to happen 2 or 3 years down the road. It's crazy out there.
Well, it's just hard because I think a lot of, when they announce the TV networks, hey, it's going to be ABC and ESPN and all that, we're going to use Fox. And we really want to build up Fox or FX. It feels like FX is really part of their strategy. And even I have here with Mike Mitchell's article, he's our XFL insider guy, 177,000 viewers on FX. that was still their second highest viewed program, right? So like, even though it's a terrible rating, it's actually not that terrible in views of like what FX normally gets. I'm afraid that this is part of the strategy, and they're not going to say we want to dump FX. Like we want to use that to build these numbers up. Should I be scared of that?
Well, always be scared of everything when it comes to the TV industry, because you don't know who the president of the network is going to be next week, next month. And, strategies can change in a heartbeat. We're seeing big layoffs across tech and TV right now. And so much money is laid out for sports rights. It's minimal with these particular leagues compared to the 120 billion for the NFL, stuff like that. But yeah, FX reminds me a little bit of the CW. The CW earlier this year struck a deal with the Live Golf tournament, the controversial Saudi Arabian-backed league that's competing with the PGA Tour. The CW was never known as a place to go watch sports. It was born out of the old WB and whatever the other network was with, Michigan J Frog back in the day as the mascot. But clearly with the new ownership of the CW, they're shifting what they want that network to be. It used to be, aimed at generally youth audiences with its programming, by putting a deep pocket golf league on there that has real talent, legitimate, like the old USFL, legitimate professional veteran and young talent, with all the politics and everything around that. It's clearly a big step in what looks like a strategy to make the CW into something else. I wouldn't be shocked if that network has a new name within a year or two, as well as all of these channels end up with different names. And that's a big experiment a lot of people are watching, because most people don't realize the CW is one of the 5 national broadcast networks. So it's big. It's in all 122 million US television households. I can see something similar with FX. If they want to make that a destination channel with live sports because they think they can make money, they will try to do that. And the reason you would use something like the XFL to do that is, number one, it's a relatively low barrier of entry. It's the cost compared to other live sports are relatively small. So it's a relatively safe experiment to do. And the other thing with live sports is they are the most resistant to the cord cutting and other phenomenon underway with television. People live sports attracts the most viewership, which is why we're talking about 670,000 people watching pickleball at noon on a Sunday. 742,000 people watched PBA bowling on Sunday as well. It's just blowing other stuff other than like cable news and some of the premieres of like prestige television or stuff like Yellowstone. These are good, solid numbers to have. You're not making a ton of money. Some of the ad rates, could be $20,000 for 30 seconds or whatever it may be. But if you want to build out FX into something different, XFL is a cheap way to do that, and live sports are a proven way to get eyeballs in a rapidly changing media landscape.
I like that you keep pointing out the 640,000 for the pickleball, because people, as you can imagine, XFL fans were up in arms that John McEnroe playing pickleball was preempting that. And we got a lot of like, oh, see, ESPN doesn't care about XFL. It's like, you can't just cut off the sport. It's the final. I don't know how pickleball works. The final frame. You can't just cut that out. But I mean, so to put it, that is interesting to put that in perspective. Pickleball drew 640,000 compared to the XFL's 365 or 356.
Yeah. No, it's, and with the pickleball thing, obviously there was some big name, recognizable historic names involved with that. And there's a curiosity factor that any new sports or programming benefits from. XFL, all 3 versions of it, USFL, all 2 versions of it, get initial big audiences because people are like, oh, what's this? And obviously Americans love football at all levels, and they respond by watching it. In networks and investors have believed for a long, long time that it's possible to challenge the NFL or to find the magic formula to make it work in springtime. And the graveyard of dead football leagues is crowded and gets more crowded every few years. The AAF joined it a couple of years ago, XFL too. But people are convinced, they're chasing this holy grail. And, in the legend, the holy grail was found, and in Hollywood, Indiana Jones found it and then lost it. But I think it can be done. Everybody has stopped trying to challenge the NFL. You're just not gonna, you're not going to match that. You're not going to beat that. It's foolish. And it's basically partners with every media network, and nobody is going to air your games. If you're like, I'm going to the fall and I'm starting a league, I'm going to put billions into it, but then you're going to have to start your own TV network and get into homes too, because nobody is going to partner with you on that. But even with the scaled down expectations, it's not easy. But I think it can be done. I don't think in 5 years we will still have 2 spring football leagues. And I believe there's discussion of the Arena Football League coming back in some form, maybe next year, which, although it is a different game, and I played that game, it's still fundamentally spring football. And when I say spring, we're really talking like the week after the Super Bowl is still wintertime. And I live in Michigan, so wintertime goes to like August. These spring leagues go through July now. So it's just about half the year that we're talking about, in NFL and college football on the other half of the year, although spring games and, the NFL is a 24/7, 365 creature. And these leagues benefit from that too, because, I'm Gen X, so I remember all the NFL guys either starting in the USFL originally or ending up there. I'm from Cleveland. Brian Sipe was my first favorite player, the old Browns quarterback in the 70s and early 80s. He ended up with the New Jersey Generals and the Jacksonville Bulls too. Bunch of big name players. And with these younger leagues, these lower tier developmental leagues, everybody's hoping to strike gold there as well. I believe the USFL had a player last season end up on an NFL roster and go to the Pro Bowl. It's not yet Jim Kelly. It's not, Herschel. It's not those guys yet. If somebody does come out of one of these developmental leagues, or like a guy, a little NFL experience, goes down, gets some time, gets his opportunity back in the big league, and, turns into the next big thing and heads to Canton, that will help the leagues. But that's a long-term play. But it certainly would benefit these leagues. So, what do we have in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years? I think one of them, maybe these leagues combine. I don't know. But I'm glad people are trying. I'm glad it's their money and not mine. But I'm not a big like baseball, hockey, or basketball watcher, but I will, if one of these games is on, USFL or XFL, I'll have it on. I'm interested. I'm always interested too in the bells and the whistles, the drone cams, and F-bombs getting picked up because every other player is mic'd. When the ambient sound isn't 400 people talking at one time, and the rule. I like the rule experimentation. The NFL is absolutely watching all of this, and at some point, some of this stuff that works in these leagues will make its way to the National Football League. I know there was discussion of the what is the 4th and 15?
Yeah, the conversion.
Conversion. I think we could see something like that, because they changed the NFL onside kick rules years ago, because you used to line up 10 guys onto one side of the kicker, and then it was just a rugby scrum for the ball. So they've tweaked that, and honestly I like the kickoff, where all of the guys are at one end of the field and nobody can move until the ball, cutting down injuries is big. Not only the injuries suck for the young man involved in his career potentially, but but the teams and the fans lose out key personnel that you need, especially these lower level leagues where your rosters aren't as deep at all. Injuries can be really devastating. And same at the NFL. You don't want to see your favorite player banged up on the hands team on an onside kick like that. So, safety is legitimately important at all levels of the game, not just for humane reasons, but business reasons as well. So I think, if nothing else, the legacy of these leagues will also be some of the rules and technological innovations around things. But man, they've got to get the sound cleaned up, because so many times I'm watching, I'm like, who said what? Because I hear the coach and I hear the players and I hear some jokers in the stands and an assistant coach. And then Mike Piera starts to, everybody's talking at once. And I'm like, oh, it's the Tower of Babel. I just want to hear some guy dropping F-bombs or something, the fun stuff you see on TV.
So we look at this, like you said, Fox and ESPN, ABC here. We want cheaper programming. We want to fill these slots. Fox, we can put 5-6 hours of this every weekend during this, during the spring, early summer. We're seeing the ratings now. Obviously, USFL did better last year, right, on network and everything else. Coming back again, they have a better slate this year. But is this worth it all? Like, are the ratings right now like that the XFL doing? Knowing what advertisers are probably paying for all of this stuff, we don't know, but you can assume, like, is this worth this experiment? Do you feel like this is vindicated through week 7 going into week 8?
Ultimately, that's going to be for the TV networks.
I know, but I want your, but what is Bill's opinion?
I think they are absolutely worthy experiments because, like I said before, I think there is some magic formula, some grail that can be found where you get a spring football property that the costs and the benefits, financial and intangible, are in a sweet spot where it just works. Now, it may not work forever. The old AFL, Arena Football League, was around a couple of decades in various formats. The Lingerie Football League, which was obviously a cheesecake sort of thing, lasted 7 or 8 years. The expectations are different. I think it's absolutely worth it from the network perspective. The advertisers, it's their money to spend, for the players, the coaches, the on-air talent, there's so many people gaining experience too, doing these games, playing in them, producing them, announcing them, officiating them. And a lot of those folks have designs on being at the highest level. And this is a step between college and the many levels of college football into getting to the NFL one day. And some people are probably perfectly content to do this and not get to the bigger leagues, because that is an even almost unimaginable different world and pressure level and everything that's coming at you and being on that stage. Some people are cool with like AAA and being content with that, and that's fine. I think it's worth it. I think everybody involved so far thinks it's worth it. I think they need to give them the full, 3 or 5 seasons, or as far as they want to go, if it's working. And if it was a merger or something, cool. That means something worked for both leagues. And just because one of them dies doesn't mean it was a failure in the sense of the idea didn't work. XFL 2.0 ran into the pandemic. That was no fault of anyone involved, not even Vince McMahon. It was just an unprecedented situation, and it was doing okay. Had that pandemic not occurred, I don't think we would see USFL 2.0. I think XFL 2.0 would have chugged along and done okay. The AAF in 2019, that was your traditional botched financing and just an absolute crap show behind the scenes. And some of the people they got in bed with was pretty unfortunate, because it didn't take a real long Google search to figure out who you were dealing with, like all the red flags you could see from Pluto in that case, from space. Yeah, I think it's worth it, but where are we at 3 years from now? I'm going to be real keen to see, but I think there will still be some sort of spring football product in a few years.
A couple questions, sure, I'll let you go, but you've been just so good at explaining all this stuff. So sorry, we're going a little over here. Obviously, Fox owns USFL. When that comes back, they have good placement, Saturday, Sunday, all of that. They control and NBC and all that stuff. When we're getting ready to hear, like, okay, what's Danny and DJ? What is everyone doing with the XFL? I think a lot of people thought, like, maybe are we doing Netflix? Are we streaming? Are we doing this stuff? They're on ESPN, ABC, okay, we're on FX, right? But like nothing really, I mean, it's still pretty meat and potatoes kind of, standard TV. Like, are you just surprised that that's the route they went? Like it's USFL, just minus, not nearly as much network power behind it, if that makes sense. Like, are you surprised they didn't pivot a different direction?
No. All of the conversation around live sports these days is about streaming and, ESPN Plus, Paramount, Peacock. I'm sure there's some folks that thought, these should have just been purely streaming products. Well, we remain in what's functionally the infancy of streaming. It's still very new compared to all of the other entertainment delivery technologies. It also loses enormous sums of money. We're talking billions and billions of dollars in aggregate from all of these networks and entertainment and streaming companies. So these were never going to end up purely on streaming. Some people thought they should. That makes sense. If this was 20 years from now, maybe that made sense. But these things were going to be an expense for both the networks that own them or are invested as just the broadcast partners. They're still not cheap, right? $150 million for each of these, trying to keep your labor costs down while not, being poverty organizations or charity organizations, providing a living wage and a real nice quality product. It's not cheap, but you need to get it on the big networks for people to see it. Because the other thing we talked about, organic discovery, is you can't flip through streaming yet like you can cable or satellite. I have Comcast here in Detroit. I can just sit there with my remote and I'll flip through 300 channels and be like, oh, the Big Lebowski's on, or oh, the XFL's on. I'll just watch that. Streaming, you have to back in and out of all of the services. Like the TV in my bedroom is a Markcast, so it takes even longer to get in and out. So putting these properties like this to start purely on streaming, they'd be dead before the season was out, just because on top of this, the streaming losses, you would have further financial losses from the streaming aspect of it. Now, and Apple can get away with this with Major League Soccer, putting almost everything behind the streaming paywall on Apple TV, because it had 27 years of maturity behind it, being on television for the most part. These are much lower tier properties. It hasn't surprised me that they've kind of had to shoehorn them in where they can. Your spring lineups are a little easier to do that. You can't do this in the fall because you're up against college and the NFL. You wouldn't make it out of week one. So no, I wasn't particularly surprised by the routes these networks were going. Plus, some of them have been on the other networks in the past. They have long files on their previous involvements in this stuff and with the other leagues. So I think they're doing what makes the most sense.
Last question for me here. I'll try to get you out before the bottom of the hour. We've survived March Madness, right? It's been horrible, and pickleball and everything else that's going to affect the XFL ratings. Like this time next year, what is that strategy? Just same thing and buckle down and know that it's going to suck ass for, weeks 4 to 7 or what do you do to try to program against that? Because to me, that's one of the really only downsides of the XFL timeframe versus the April to, July USFL.
Yeah, there's no easy way to do it. It's the little incremental things you do along the way, the quality of the product, the quality of the broadcast. Others have tried to start right after the Super Bowl. Others have waited till April in the past. And with the shifting media landscape and consumer habits, it is so hard to predict. I suspect both leagues would love it if they were the lone league still around a year from now. I think both of them still will be. And I think the numbers generally, if they can get a little better for both, will help them both survive. And I'm honestly really looking forward to this Sunday's everything, because it's Easter Sunday, which traditionally had been the death knell for live sports, but that's changed. Last year, USFL, big numbers, Masters, big numbers, others, F1, other stuff on Easter Sunday, is all of a sudden it's become like Thanksgiving and Christmas, which the NBA and the NFL own, where it's become a live sports holiday with big numbers. So this Sunday, I think, will be a milestone to watch for the XFL, which will give us a little insight into maybe what could happen next year. I think they'll both still be around, and barring something we don't know about in 2024. I don't know that they'll be radically different, but we'll see. They will have an off season to adjust on the fly, and we have no idea what technology will even be around a year from now. I mean, they may be beaming games straight into our eyeballs or something. Who knows? We've come a long way in a short amount of time.
Well, Bill, I will be at the Sea Dragons game on Sunday, front row. I'll be there with my wife Easter Sunday, so look for us on the broadcast. I appreciate your time today. Thanks again for sharing your knowledge.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited. Friends of the XFL will know this man, Josh Lewin, here with XFL Week in Review, XFL.com, everything else. Josh, really appreciate your flexibility coming on my crazy work week and your schedule. How are you doing, sir?
Good. And please no, sir. I'm already feel so freaking old. All you 20 and 30 somethings killing it in this space. But it's really cool to be on with you. And I'm loving the season, loving this project that they've got me doing. And all is right with the world.
Well, I like it, and I want to get your perspective, and obviously you do your show every week, but I always, it's different when you kind of long form here, sit for a few minutes and talk about it. First off, what's the season like for you? How are you feeling overall grade of the XFL?
Well, I mean, it's a great and simple question, but it doesn't have a simple answer, because I think, like a lot of us, you want it to just, really dazzle, and just take over the world. And it hasn't done that. To me, this is all kind of like in beta, as they say on Shark Tank, where it's like, things are in development. To me, it's like, when a restaurant opens, what they call a soft open almost, right? It's like the menu's not fully formed and it's not going to be what it's going to be, but you want to get the restaurant open and get people eating the food. So the food tastes great in that analogy, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. It's already very good. But I think they're just kind of scratching the surface and feeling their way on some things, and that's to be expected, because this is a whole new group, between Redbird Capital and Danny and Dwayne Johnson and Russ Brandon and everybody. Everybody's new. So what they've done to get this going and get it organized is phenomenal. But to me, it's not quite the polished product it's going to be 2, 3, 4 years from now.
How did you get involved in this? How did you get excited to come on board?
Well, I was just excited there was an XFL restart, and Russ, Brandon, and I go back an embarrassingly long way. We were interns together for a minor league team in Rochester, New York, like a bazillion years ago. And we've just always been friends. I did was the play-by-play guy for the San Diego Chargers right up until they moved to LA. He was running the Bills, and, every time the Bills and Chargers played, we would just always get together and had a nice relationship that way. So, we know a lot of the same people, and when their season got close to kicking off, I think what they realized correctly is, like, we need to make sure that we've got our own branded content. There's going to be enough good stuff like what you do out there, which is amazing. But if the league doesn't have anything, that's just kind of silly. Like, you look at, there's MLB.com and there's NFL.com and there's NBA.com, and they're doing their own content. And I think what they realized kind of like right before the season was like, oh shit, we don't have that yet. So, I don't do baseball anymore. I mean, that was always my thing for March, April, May, and beyond. And I think Russ kind of put 2 and 2 together. And I, had reached out to him saying, I would love to be involved and help you guys in whatever capacity. I think he was the one, and we haven't really talked about it. I just, from what I'm piecing together, he had his people reach out to me saying, hey, if you're still basically just not doing anything in March and April, we need like that Peter King kind of guy to just, churn out some league content. So I'm a fan. So I'm like, sure, put my journalism degree to use. I haven't used it in forever, but I'll try to remember how to write stuff. And, I know how to do podcasts, so it's not a problem. And, I'd put my own thing in kind of beta as well, where it's like, okay, I'm just kind of vomiting some stuff out there right now. It's not fully formed yet. I just want to make sure that people, football fans, not just across the nation, but across the planet, know that the XFL is a thing, and here's why you should be watching it.
So you said kind of beta form coming in there, feeling everything out. How have you felt talent level wise, entertainment wise, however you want to look at it, but how is the XFL done?
Well, to me, it's like when you come on trumpeting, it's going to be Josh Gordon and Martavis Bryant, and they're just going to lap the field because, they've been in the NFL. And then it turns out they're just kind of guys. To me, that's like a really good harbinger of things to come and what's in the present as well. That, hey, there's apparently some guys that are doing it even better. When Josh Gordon's your third option, something's going very, very right in Seattle, for example. So I like the fact that it's a lot of young guys, and some have kind of put their feet in the NFL water, some have not. But in terms of pure talent, I'm actually very impressed. I think the missing link, if that's the right phrase, is it just everything came together so hurriedly that having offensive lines gel was just not a thing. Having a thick playbook was just not a thing. So that's the downside of kind of rushing to market like they did. But again, with what they've been able to put together in a short amount of time, I think it's fantastic.
Well, I think there's two sides to that, right? Obviously, spring football is always going to be, we have 5 weeks of training camp, whatever. That's always going to be crazy. But, when it comes to they've owned this thing 2.5 years, so I get the hurriedness of the spring football, but then it's also like, we spent a year on the podcast talking about the CFL stuff here. So there has been time to kind of work on other things. Are you surprised that it feels the way that it has, or felt the way that it had hitting the season?
Yeah, I'm kind of like you on the yes and no, right? Because again, there were just so many unknowns about how this was all going to come together. And I get what you're saying. It's not like this was invented out of thin air and there had never been an XFL before. They had a really good footprint in 2020, but there were new characters in the show here. There were new producers, new directors, all of it. So I'm not disappointed really by anything other than, frankly, the attendance in some of the places. I think that's quite obvious. I'm sure they didn't think they were going to be playing at Cashman Field in Vegas, and it's just not a facility that's going to have 20,000 screaming football fans in there. It's just not. Some of the other places, I think Arlington could be a real mecca, but they need a more exciting product, to be honest. All these 10-9 games are not going to get people to drive down from Frisco, even though it's a very reasonable ticket price and it's football, which obviously everybody loves in that DFW Metroplex. So, things to sculpt and things that could get better. But again, by and large, you have so many success stories to point at, St. Louis probably being number one on the list when you're getting the 35,000 people in there, and it's a market that aches for it. And you've got a marketable guy like AJ McCarron, and you got Darius Shepard, who's so super exciting, and, Hakeem Butler making plays. That stuff you can point to and tell people, like, check that out.
It's a reliance, I think, in some of these older markets. I'm here in Seattle, and, I think they expected, hey, we had 20,000 whatever people back in 2020. Now the Kraken, as this show airs Friday, could have clinched a playoff spot at this point.
Right.
We'll be there Thursday night. Like, it's a different world. So it's weird to me of, we're kind of relying on, and I have a follow-up, but like, we're kind of relying on some of this stuff, but also like, we're not really cultivating. Like, I don't see any Seattle marketing. I don't see any, St. Louis, they have one billboard. Okay. Like, but I don't see anywhere near what there was in 2020. And I know the marketing budget's low, but it just still does surprise me.
And that's why I'm just kind of trusting that this is like, okay, let's just build a platform here. Like, this is a scaffold on which to stand so they can start doing some painting, right? Like, this is the erection of the scaffolding, to get it up and get it going. So, but I agree. I mean, like, I was in DC. I've been spending a lot of time back there due to some family concerns. And yeah, I don't see any Defenders swag other than what's right there being sold at Audi, I mean, so that is kind of the next step, the next level. And I'm not a marketing expert and I'm not in that department or anything like that. But yeah, quite obviously, there's got to be a budget and a desire to be as proactive as possible, because a lot of these markets, like you say, are very competitive now. I mean, Seattle's such a great example when you've got the soccer team that's always going to kick butt because, that's a nice niche that's been carved out. The Kraken is beyond a niche. They're going to get NBA back again. The Mariners are good all of a sudden. The Seahawks are the Seahawks. So you can't just like show up and expect people are just going to beat down your door. Like, you have to get creative and you have to get out there. So my sense is, and I should have insight to this because I'm kind of marketed as an insider. I'm not quite yet because, I'm still nibbling on the edges as well. The overall sense that I get is that, yeah, once we've got the scaffolding set up, let's grab some paintbrushes and get going, and let's really get dirty and busy in these markets and make it interesting to be a Sea Dragons fan or a Brahmas fan or, or wherever you are, a Defenders fan. I mean, there's, the Defenders are such a good story, and that should be, just being hollered all around that, Virginia and Maryland area, but it's not like they have a 10-person marketing department. They just don't.
Well, especially, and I'm a Commanders fan here living in Seattle, but, inexplicably, the Commanders are not a phenomenal team right now for the DC area. I know many of my Commanders fans that would much rather, listener Seth, for one, that would much rather watch the DC Defenders right now than the, Washington Commanders.
Sure.
The interview last week that Danny and The Rock had on USA Today kind of surprised me. There was a quote. Tom had the article. I think that we're glad to get the monkey off our back now. We're ready. We're done with we can move on from XFL 2020. We can make our own history. It always surprises me the balance of we want to buy this league, kind of invest in. We have all these existing fan bases, but then we don't ever want to acknowledge or like this is our own thing now. It's a weird balance of that. Do you any sense of kind of how they look at that or how you would look at that? Like, we want to inherit this, but then knock everything down.
Yeah. The only thing I can really compare it to, it's like, and it all comes back to that Washington, D.C. area again, when the Montreal Expos moved to RFK Stadium and became the Washington Nationals. It's not like the Montreal Expos history just went away, right? I mean, Andre Dawson was still a hell of a player, and that's always going to be the case, but he never played for the Washington Nationals. So you acknowledge the history of the organization, but, at the same time, I get it. The Nationals were like, well, hey, we're the Nationals. We didn't have anything to do with Ellis Valentine or Andre Dawson or whoever. So I think that is a delicate balance. And like you, I hear what they're saying. I mean, this is their baby now, but they didn't give birth to it. So it's a very odd construct, but I understand it. I mean, they do want to put their own stamp on it. And Danny in particular has just been so active and cool in terms of, just blazing trails and, getting things done. So I'm confident that the simple way to say it is I really think they know what they're doing. It's just that, these things, unfortunately, I think you and I are in that camp. It's like, it's that immediate gratification of like, hey, let's make this super freaking cool right now. Let's just have $100 million marketing budget. Let's really get crazy, and I think it's more of a slow build. And again, I have no business background of my own other than the fact, like I say, I watch Shark Tank every once in a while, but I get it. You can't just vomit out, good ideas with bad ideas and see, we'll figure it out when we get there. I think that kind of a low rolling boil, is probably a good way to go. And that's what they're doing.
I want to make sure we talk about this before we get out of here. Reports, because this will be coming out. We've had obviously the Kurt Benkurts of it all, and him getting injured, which obviously hurts kind of the big, he was the big face coming in and hurt for him in the same way. XFL analyst is putting out that Paxton Lynch is heading to San Antonio. Are you surprised that it does feel like, with the Luis Perez trade and everything, these coaches are really taking this seriously right now? Like, hey, we're going into week 8, but like we still really care about this?
Oh, for sure. And let's not forget, every win, everybody's getting an extra $1,000 in their paycheck. I mean, so it's not like you just coast to the finish line here. And, here's, Orlando started 0-6 and they played a great game and earned that win to get to 1-6 against a team that was undefeated. And now you start to do the math and like, well, wait a minute, like they could actually make the playoffs and they could actually if they get hot, I mean, they might, and very healthy and nobody else is. You start like moving the numbers around in your head and you're like, oh my God, like anything can happen down the stretch here. So when Seattle signs Philip Lindsay, I mean, that's another just kind of like huge shot up into the atmosphere that says, no, like everybody's taking this super seriously right now. Everybody wants to close fast and everybody wants to win.
Before I let you go, I appreciate your time. Do you, having gone, we complete the season here, right? Okay, we have championship tickets on sale, everything else this week. Successful season. Do you feel like the XFL has kind of carved in its niche here? We have the USFL starting here in a couple weeks. Like, does the XFL belong in this space, and have they done enough to kind of prove that?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, and if I had to grade it, I mean, to me, it's like a B+. There's room for growth. I'd have been stunned if they would have come out and just hit every single, checked every box, and we're all walking around going, "This is the best." Like, don't change a thing. It's definitely better than average. It's certainly better than a C. That the product itself, just the way it looks on TV, the access is incredible. We haven't talked about that, but I mean, how much fun is it just to watch and listen? I mean, it's like you can't turn away. And that, to me, that's the biggest thing they can market going forward. And again, I really have come to believe, nobody, said this to me from the league, but just from where I sit, which is kind of on my couch, it's like, okay, I get it. It's like, they're putting out, they're shaping this in real time. They're deciding what works and what doesn't. Again, they're like working on this menu as they go before the restaurant really gets hot and you can't get in, so I like it. I think we all wanted to just like double dog love it. So somewhere it's like extreme, I guess is where I am with it. And, super flattered and thrilled that they've got me involved. I think there are some more big things coming. I really do get a sense that they have a plan, that they have the infrastructure to make that happen. Again, I'm transparent about my friendship with Russ. You're not going to get me to say anything bad about the guy. I think he works his ass off and does a great job. Above him with Danny and Dwayne, top-notch people, slightly below Russ, the people like Janet Duke and, Bill McCullough and, Jay Rothman was such an amazing get for the TV side. I mean, you see what he and Mandy Cohen and that group have done by making these TV broadcasts just amazing. Again, there are some next steps. I'd love to see like a weekly show on Sirius XM. I'd love to see a weekly or twice a week show on ESPN, way above my pay grade. But, once you figure out exactly what you are, and they're in that process right now, beat the drum, beat it real loud, because there are people like you, there are people like me that really do care and want to get out there and continue to help shape it in any way we can. We're all fans. We wanted to do well. So I'm beyond cautiously optimistic. I'm optimistic that they can take a B+ and take it to an A real quick.
Well, you already answered my last question about what you want to see next, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to see more Russ. I interviewed him. We went down for the Hub announcement. I want to see more Russ. I mean, let's get him on, and I know he's a busy guy, but I want him as kind of, I know Danny's kind of the face there, but I like Russ on the football side. Well, Josh, I really appreciate it fitting me in today with your busy schedule and everything else, so thank you so much, and obviously everyone checking out your work, XFL.com and the XFL Week in Review podcast.
Well, I'm so impressed with what you're doing, brother. Thank you. Not that I'm some league spokesman, but if I was doing the on behalf of the league thing, if I was allowed to do that, I would say thank you, because it's guys like you that really do drive this thing. So keep up the awesome work, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Friend of the show, Josh. Very, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, man.
Well, last time we spoke with this individual, I think it was the XFL kickoff game day. We have Eric Eager here from Sumer Sports here on YouTube and everything else. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I've been really enjoying the league. I made a comment on Twitter today that every XFL game right now has a total this week of above 40, which I feel like is a great sign for the league right now.
It's good. Yeah, I saw that. I retweeted that out. It feels like, at least through last weekend, it seemed like was kind of the peak gameplay so far. And obviously with Orlando and everything else, a lot of high point totals. It seems like a lot of offense clicking.
Yeah. And the teams that, were so desolate at the beginning have found a little bit of a spark, right? The Orlando Guardians got, Quentin Dormady, that sort of weird thing where he supposedly gave away the plays and then didn't or whatever. Now he's been, I think, when he's played, a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the entire league. So he adds some spark there. The San Antonio Brahmas with, Ben Curry at least gave him a little bit of a spark last week. Now he's hurt, but they play Houston, who has, I think, fallen back down to the pack for sure when they're not playing teams in the South. And their defense is not particularly as good as I think that they were the early parts of the season. So, there are going to be some games, I think, here that are closer. Every single spread under a touchdown right now.
It's weird. Houston kind of really, feels like it fell back down to earth. We were at the Lumen Field game, the first loss they had to the Sea Dragons. And, you kind of thought that was a fluke. And then here you go. And whenever they're playing anyone in the North, it seems like they're really struggling and obviously coming out short again this week. What do you make of them? Or did they look better at the beginning of the season and now are coming back down to earth, or have they just been exposed?
Yeah, I think it's, Brandon Silvers was not a very good quarterback. In the last version of the XFL, he's not a terribly good quarterback. He gets injured. So then you have to go with Cole McDonald, who I've always sort of called, like, when he played for Hawaii, I called him College Jameis because he had like all the ups and the downs, a lot of the interceptions. And we saw that. I mean, Brian Hill fumbled on like the first play of the game the other day, Sunday, and they're marching to try to go up a score, and he throws an interception on third down, and there's just ups and downs there. I think the run and shoot offense especially is like, it's really fun when it's working and it's really awful when it's not, and Houston has run into that a little bit with AJ Smith calling those plays. They don't really have they make explosive plays at times, but not the sort of the consistency. And then defensively, they just, haven't necessarily been able to hold the line that much. I mean, DC on that Monday night game a couple weeks ago really just did whatever they wanted to, both in the air and on the ground. So that's been one where I think they made a lot of money playing their own division, which has been bad. And when they've played the North, it's been not as pretty.
Yeah, the comment we had, I think, on our live thing on Monday, the live stream, was you didn't hear as much of AJ talking with Cole as you did with Brandon. And that was the whole thing. We've been talking for weeks. And, he's right in the ears till the last second and talking to the receivers, all that. Felt like, I don't know if he left Cole out to dry. It didn't feel like they have the same chemistry. And obviously Brandon's known AJ for years, but you think AJ could still be doing that for Cole?
Well, and that's got to be essential, right? I mean, if that's, if you are going to be the offensive coordinator that does that, then I think it has to apply to everybody. And of course, in this case, that wasn't the case for Houston. And it's tough because a lot of that run and shoot offense is kind of feel based, right? And if the quarterback doesn't have the feel for the end of the play clock there, you're going to be calling plays that the defense can adjust to. And that's why the run and shoot, ultimately, after the mid 90s or so, was not an offense that worked in pro football. And so that, and that's why June Jones, even though I think he had some success in Atlanta, it was never really a sustainable thing. And he had to resort to college and stuff. And now, you're kind of in this middle ground where you're in a professional league, but you're not as good as the NFL. Teams will catch up to it.
Overall, and we'll preview kind of all 4 of the games here, but overall, are you more impressed, less impressed? How are you feeling about XFL 2023 since we last spoke kind of pre-kickoff?
Oh, I think it's been great. I mean, I think, I talk about, the totals. I think that there's scoring in the league, and it's not because the defenses are horrendous. I think there's been really good defense. I don't think that there's the play has been bad. I think quarterback, obviously you have the inconsistencies there, like a guy like Ben DiNucci, where for a lot of the league, it felt like Kyle Sloter, USFL, where they'd move the ball and then be awful in the red zone. And over the past few weeks, DiNucci has really delivered inside the 20 and has been a good player for Seattle. They've won, quietly 5 games in a row. You look at, Jordan Tiamu, who had a really good XFL season in 2020, had a pretty bad USFL season, has been pretty good for DC as they've won all but one game. I think the quality of play has been terrific. I think it's been better than XFL 2020. I think XFL 2020, of course, only got 5 weeks. We've seen 7 of this one. I think it was on its way to doing the same thing, but the structure of the league has been conducive to, I think, good football.
I think we remember 2020 better than it was. Yeah, you get what I mean? I think, save for PJ Walker kind of running circles. I think people have this romanticized version of something that went away. And I think this is fine this year. I don't know if it leaps and bounds better or worse in 2020, but in my head, I think people remember that as every single one of those games. It took the first couple of weeks to really get going too. Yeah,
for sure. And if you bet under, basically in that league, you won, I think, 65% of your bets as well. I have to go back and look. I would say the 2020 XFL was trending up, but it certainly started closer to 2019 AAF, which was, kind of weaker football, I would say, where 2019 AAF, 75% of the games hit under, and you were looking at totals in the 30s by the time you got to the final week 8 there. Whereas, in this one, you're seeing the totals move up, and I think rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, there's people talk. I think it was DC, or it was Battlehawks in DC, and they kind of just went to a run game, and they were running Tyree Jackson. It was not exciting games. I mean, it was a cool game that they were able to kind of kill the Battlehawks, but it wasn't necessarily thrilling football every single week back in 2020.
Yeah, that was the beer snake game. That was about 3 days before we were all shut down for COVID. Absolutely, I remember that game because I bet a fairly decent sized amount on the under in that game, and it was a no doubter, which was fun to see. But I don't know. If I was a betting man this year, I don't think under is really the way to make money. I think, in fact, that the markets have properly priced a lot of these teams, which is a good sign. I mean, I think. There are ways to make these leagues better for the teams that are playing offense, and I think that the XFL has done that.
Any other general thoughts? We can kind of go game by game here real quick. Any other general league thoughts or player thoughts?
No, I'm interested to see, just kind of as, I know you cover all these leagues. I'm interested to see with the talent the way it's been in this spring league, 2 weeks from now, when we see USFL, what's it going to look like there? Because we just have not seen, there have been some players who were superstars in the USFL last year who really haven't made an impact this year in the XFL. So I do wonder if the other shoe is going to drop once we get to mid-April and we get to watch the other league.
We were actually just talking in our group chat this morning that at least the consensus is most of the USFL teams haven't done a lot to replace a lot of the guys that have left, right? It made a lot of those major stars. It may be obviously you're going to find new players that are going to step up, but I don't know if any USFL teams look substantially better right now on paper than they did, leaving the season last year with all the turnover.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, you add another league, and the fact that you can't really. I mean, a question I have is does Kyle Sloter get to play in the USFL now that he got cut in the XFL? Is that a thing? Can he come in and make that quarterback position better league wide? Because right now I saw what is it, Michigan Panthers? Who is the kid that Carson Strong? I saw him throwing some passes for them. I actually don't even know calibration wise where Carson Strong is in the XFL. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those players, but my guess would be that the quality of play would be lower later half of the summer than in the spring.
Well, you're going to get in trouble here if people don't like it when we say USFL stuff on here. So we have here Vegas, the Jalen McClendon revelation here coming out, going up against St. Louis, back at home again, AJ McCarron, all of that. Thoughts on this matchup? I mean, I think Battlehawks live at home now for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they had a really nice structure there. Now, they're 5-2. They've had some, one of my good friends, Bruce Gradkowski, one of my former colleagues at PFF, I think has really found his legs as an offensive coordinator there. AJ McCarron, I think, has emerged. Him and DiNucci, as well as Dormady, are probably the best quarterbacks in this league. So, they're favored by 6.5, 7, depending upon the book you're at. I think that number's a little short. I'd probably make them 10-point favorites in this game just because you have uncertainty associated with the Vipers and their quarterback situation and their coaching situation and kind of, how good is the Battlehawks home field? I think, it would suggest a lower number than NFL because of the travel. But St. Louis has certainly shown out in almost all their home games so far. So that one's an interesting one for me. I would imagine the Battlehawks will come away winning, and I wouldn't be surprised they went away with it.
Are you surprised McClendon looked as good as he did kind of coming off the bench? We done the Luis Perez and Huntley thing, everything else the rest of the season. And it's kind of like, why did this guy ride the bench for the first 6-7 weeks?
It does, but Luis Perez is a very good quarterback, right? I think especially in these spring leagues, like he has always shown himself to be a pretty good passer. I know when he played for New Jersey in the USFL, they had a split time, but whenever he played, he was very efficient, and he was very efficient for when he was playing earlier in the year before the trade. So Huntley has league experience. Perez has a lot of spring league experience. It didn't surprise me that much that they waited all the way until now to move on to a different option.
Thoughts on just how good St. Louis has looked? You talked about Bruce and one of your former colleagues, but just back to being able to get everything going, running that offense like he has, and AJ. I mean, it really seems like they're all gelling as one of the top teams.
Yeah, I think Bruce struggled at the beginning for sure. I thought that there was execution was a big deal, but now it's like it seems like every third down and red zone play somebody's wide open, and you really like that. At the beginning of the season was like run play, and then try to make Austin Prohl make a cool play, and now you got guys like Hakeem Butler is able to make contested plays, make plays after the catch. Some of their other receivers have been wonderful, and so Austin Prohl hasn't even been a real part of that offense. And then you look at sort of the run game. Brian Hill's been, really good. Aside from the fumbles, he's made plays out of the backfield. He's been kind of that, kind of everything running back for them. And so things have really just improved from a execution standpoint. And then when you execute on early downs, I think the play calling is a lot easier on later downs because you're in shorter yardage situations. And I think that, so it's kind of snowballed for the Battlehawks.
Yeah, Darius Shepard's also just looked really good as well. I joke, he was on the show a couple weeks ago, not the most vocal person in the world, kind of soft-spoken, but certainly on the field is exciting nonetheless. But yeah, coming out and they had the fumble and all of that, really able to turn everything around, and they had the record field goal kick, 62 yards or whatever the hell it was for the field goal record now for the XFL.
Yeah, well, and they played the end of the half really well. I mean, they had a third and forever type situation. They picked up 15. They went for a fourth down. They didn't get it, but they played great defense, got the ball back, and were able to get in position. I think it was a 59-yarder, but they were able. I mean, Anthony Becht you always wonder about these spring league coaches, do they understand gameplay and stuff like that? And he, to me, has not had a real egregious error from a game management situation for quite some time now.
Coming here to a game that has a little bit more meaning. Obviously, Vipers now, I think, are the first team officially eliminated from the playoffs. A game much more excited. We have the Renegades, obviously, Luis Perez trading over there, and then them signing Kelly Bryant as well, putting Drew Plitt on the injured reserve. Orlando gave DC their big loss here last weekend. Exciting. This game means a lot more. I mean, Orlando isn't mathematically out of this.
Right. I mean, in fact, I think if they win out, there's probably a decent path to the playoffs for them at, what would it be, 4-6. I think, now, quarterback play is the most important thing in the NFL. And what separates the NFL from, say, hockey is that goalie and quarterback are about equally as important. But in goalie, it's a random thing, and quarterback play is easy to predict. I think in spring leagues, the same is true, but quarterback is much less easy to predict, right? So you think about Dormady has been wonderful. He's had two really fantastic games, covered the spread against Vegas, a couple weeks ago with a lot of plays, and then obviously they win outright as 9.5-point underdogs last week. If he can continue here, they are favored in this game. It opened, I think, Arlington -1.5. It's now Orlando -1, -1.5. It's not a huge move. Points aren't worth that much, but I support them being favored here. I think that they're a good, a team that, can be dangerous, and it's all about their quarterback. And it seems like their head coach, Terrell Buckley, has gotten out of the way, which has been positive for them.
Yeah, he seemed really humble after the game. They had the press conference. Yeah, this wasn't all built in the day. It's weird that the Renegades. I think they could put anyone with under center their quarterback, but I think unless their offensive play calling and everything gets figured out, I don't think anything they do at this point is going to make a difference. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob Stoops has been, kind of calling plays, kind of bored, and I don't know. It's not boredom built out of anything other than. I just don't know if they have a ton of weapons. I think Sal Cannell is a good tight end, but like that really hasn't been as magical as it was in the USFL. Quarterback has been a disaster. It'll be interesting to see if Perez can add something to it, but offensive line play hasn't been terribly good either. And I think that for a guy like Perez, like one of the reasons he hasn't been able necessarily to be effective, in every stop he's been in. He's been effective most places, but every stop he's been in is because, pass protection doesn't necessarily handle it. When you look at PFF grades, for example, Arlington's third to last in the XFL in PFF pass blocking grades. I think that's going to be a situation that might hurt Perez.
So you would give the edge here to the Guardians. Anything else to say about this matchup?
No, I think that this is one where Arlington is one of the more frustrating offenses in the XFL, and Orlando is one of the more surprisingly fun ones now.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando was kind of a slug there to watch for a while, but now, like I said, this game is suddenly a lot more appealing here. Obviously, we have the Roughnecks, Kurt Benkert going down. That was sad, right? Came in and played fine. I think it was hard. He's building sandcastles with, I think, his daughter. He's got to come in and play quarterback here in the XFL. I assume at this point they're going with Juwan Pass. We're recording this earlier in the week, and God forbid if there's a trade or whatever. But what do you make of this? Roughnecks coming off of, I think, 3 losses in a row now.
Yeah, I think with the Roughneck, I mean, this is a classic get right situation. They open, I think, 4-point favorites. It's 4.5 now. Like, I get that. Like, San Antonio is a team. I mean, they had the back-to-back with Arlington, and by the time you got to that second game, that total was like 33.5 or something, and every bit deserved, because this is a team. Now, I know they beat Arlington in the second time, but without a fumble return, without some real help by the pass interference penalties, like, I don't think they crossed the 50. And they got 12 points early in the process, on Saturday. But one of them was a kick return. One of them was, aided, I think, by a pass interference penalty in the end zone. Like, this is not a team that can move the football. So, I think if you're betting this game, it's Houston or nothing. I think that San Antonio, to me, is like the only team right now in the league where if their game is on, I'm like, this kind of isn't going to be particularly entertaining. Hopefully they can stick with, Juwan Pass in the same way, like let him kind of get his legs under him the same way that DC does with Derek King and Jordan Tiamu. I think that that's the only real way that they can get anything done in this game.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's misfortune or what, but just all the injuries going through and like all the quarterback stuff, it just feels like, I don't know if it's a Hines Ward issue there, like it was with Terrell Buckley, where he was kind of in the way. I can't figure out what the deal is with the Ramos.
Yeah, it's been rough, and they haven't really been great at sort of anything. You look around, maybe defensively, you could look at their run defense, you could look at like their coverage. But and they haven't given up a ton of points. I think they've given up the fewest points in the whole league, but a lot of that is just because their offense hasn't been able to really move the football, and all those games get kind of caught in the mud.
Anything else with the Roughnecks? Presumably, if Brandon's able to play, I think he has like something wrong with his arm, or we go to Cole McDonald and try to maybe get some more plays around his mobility versus trying to have him throw like they were going to have Brandon do.
Yeah, I think you have to use Cole McDonald's mobility, right? You have to, once you get to your backup quarterback, you have to sort of use every part of him. And that, to me is going to be some of that running that he's able to do.
Last game of the week here, the game I will be at Easter Sunday. This is going to be exciting. I guess both of these on Easter, but the Easter Sunday night game for 7 Easter. We'll see. I'm scared what attendance is going to look like, what ratings are going to look like, but I will be at Lumen Field here. I think this is the biggest game of the weekend. Do you disagree?
No, I don't at all. I mean, I think this is, when you think about that North, that there's only 2 teams that are going to make it. There's going to be 3 teams that are deserving, right? And DC has a one game edge over St. Louis and Seattle, but with a loss here, they're all, and we assume that St. Louis is favorites early in the weekend are going to win. Then everybody's tied at 6-2, and that really starts to bring in some tiebreakers and some fun things into the mix. And like, look, DC is a good football team. Like, they went to St. Louis and won going away. They won at home against Houston going away on Monday night. So they're a solid football team. You saw some of the cracks there defensively against Orlando. Seattle's got some of those characteristics. I mean, Ben DiNucci is about as good of a quarterback as you're going to get in a league like this. And, when he's on, hard to beat him, right? And he's made, especially on some late downs in recent weeks, made some throws that I think are pretty impressive. So you look at the betting mark in this game, you look, Seattle's favored by about 1.5. Total on the game, 47. 47, I believe, is the highest total we've seen in this league so far this year, maybe 47.5 in a previous game. But you're talking about a game where the scoring is projected to be about as high as it's been. And I think that the only way that doesn't happen is if DC can run the football, not necessarily the way that they've done in a lot of games, which is explosive plays, but more like kind of that down to down 6-7 yards at a time.
Is that them Seattle having the favorite? Is that kind of home field? Does that balance that out? Is that why I'm surprised that they're the favorite? Because I mean, we know it's not really home field advantage.
Yeah, well, I think it depends. Like, I don't think they're going to get the crowd that a St. Louis would get, right? So then it's almost entirely, familiarity, which in this league you don't really have because they're all in the same hub, during the week. So I'm not sure. I actually think, like, fundamentally, people just don't necessarily. I think fundamentally the betting markets just underrate running quarterbacks, and that is where DC's sort of strength has always been. Like, if you look at like per play passing efficiency, Tiamu's had his moments, but it's not. I mean, you look at yards per pass attempt. Jordan Tiamu is, it's actually a little bit higher than Ben DiNucci. But when you look at passing yards, he's like 600 yards behind the guy, right? And so, only 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Like, I think that we generally speaking underrate those types of teams that run the football with their quarterback, and I think that's one where DC has been underrated on the market sort of all year.
Well, Eric, I appreciate it. Any other final thoughts before we go? Good to catch up and hear week 8. I can't believe it. Week 8 of the XFL.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, this has been great. Thanks for having me. And I always love talking about these spring leagues. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, go check out Eric over at Super Sports, everything, and Eric on Twitter. I really appreciate it, getting you guys the fantasy and the DFS and the betting, all that stuff. I love giving the extra perspective on that. So thank you so much. Well, I didn't have time to put it on, but I did want to show you. I do own an official Spring League Jousters jersey, not quite a Hughes Aviators jersey, but we go a long way back with this man. We have Mathew Sexton here. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I love I'm not a huge fan of the Jousters jersey, but because I'm an Aviators guy myself, but I'm doing good, man. Doing good.
Yeah, we did somehow I came upon a stash of those on eBay a few months ago. We gave them away for some of the podcast stuff. So we have Blues jerseys out in the wild now, Generals. I don't think we got any. It was the Hughes before it was the Aviators, but that was quite one of my favorite brandings of all spring football.
It was the Hughes. What is that? What is a Hugh?
So it was the Howard Hughes before it was the Aviators, and then they rebranded it, and then it was the Aviators because no one knew what the Hughes was. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know that. So what? That was how many spring leagues were there? Was there like four or five of them?
Because you were in the 2021. It was the 2021 November. I think they rebranded it before that. I think it was the Hughes back when it was like just the week-long camp or whatever, and then they traded it into the Aviators. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Mathew Sexton here with the Vipers today, coming off a good game, a win here. How is it's been kind of a rocky season for you guys? How's everything going?
Good. I mean, like you said, it was a good win. It was a good team win for us. I think that was, probably one of our best games, honestly, from all 3 phases from offense. I mean, I know they had a big kickoff return on special teams, but I mean, other than that, like we were lights out on our special teams unit. Offense, defense did well. I mean, defense only gave up 6 points, and then, we're hitting 30s, so I mean, you can't really get much better than that. So I think it was one of our best games that we played, and it was good. It was just good to get that second win.
What's it been like for you this season? I've talked to a couple other players. How's coach keeping you guys kind of upbeat here with everything going on?
Yeah, I mean, a big emphasis on everything is because, a lot of the guys want to go and play in the NFL after this, so just because, maybe our playoff contention, we're not going to be in the playoffs anymore. It doesn't mean that there's still not games to play and film to put out there, so we got 3 more games left to, you want to go play in the NFL, you got 3 games left to make it happen. So, that's a big part of, what we kind of preach as, players and then coaches on the team. But also it's just about having that like pride to win, like nobody likes losing in anything in life, so it's just having that like pride that you're going to line up, across from another grown man and win, and not accept losing.
What was it like coming into the XFL this year? We've tried, like I said, spring league and bounced around to different camps and everything else. What did you kind of view this opportunity walking in?
Yeah, I mean, like I was just saying, like it's kind of a opportunity to get film for an NFL team. I was in Kansas City and had an injury in Kansas City, which, eventually led to me getting cut. And it was it's been a very long process of getting rehab, and just getting my body back to 100%. So, who knows what would have, for me personally, who knows what would have happened if I didn't take this opportunity, maybe, nothing, so it's just kind of one of those things that if you really want to play football, you're going to make something happen.
What's the hub life been like for you thus far?
Say that one more time.
The hub life. Are you enjoying are you enjoying the XFL hub?
Yeah. Like, what do you mean? Like, what you mean?
Just how they taking care of you? You having fun? You getting everything you need?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's cool out here. Me and my girlfriend are living together right now, and it's nice. I mean, they got the hotel for people who don't really want to have their own spot. I'm a personable guy, so I like to have my own place. And I have a dog, and so we have 2 dogs actually, but we only have 1 for right now. And so it's nice though, man. They feed us. Traveling. They make traveling very easy. So I really can't complain. I was in the spring league, back then, so this is a step up for sure.
Yeah, we have the famous Brian Woods talking when I think it was when they had the outbreak and running out of food and stuff. We had Kent Shelby on screaming, and that was like the early peak of our podcast back about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I can't even. I remember Kent Shelby being on there actually, but wow, that's crazy that you say that. But I don't blame Brian Woods for any of that, man. He was trying to give us an opportunity, and some things maybe didn't go quite the way, but I appreciate his opportunity that he was trying to give us.
Yeah, so you're talking, travel, everything. Big game this weekend, going into St. Louis. How are you preparing for that? How are they guys getting you? I imagine it's going to be a pretty raucous environment.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, 40,000 people, man. I'm jacked up for that game. But yeah, I mean, it's just the same as every week. It's just getting the game plan in and trying to execute and practice and give each other a look. Guys, on the squad, you got to get in, do some scout team reps, give our defense the looks that they want to see, and I mean vice versa. So it's nothing's changed. We played St. Louis once, and it was fairly disappointing. And we're gonna go in there and try and make something different happen.
Besides the Coach Winston, how's the rest of the staff doing? Kind of coaching you guys up, learning from them. We've had Luis Perez on in the past talking about kind of the quality of all the coaching staff for you guys. What do you make of everyone that the XFL's assembled to help you guys out?
I like it. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of knowledge. Especially in our, on our team, there's what the thing was like 200 plus years of coaching experience on our coaching staff or something crazy like that. So, I can't even, there's just so much wisdom and so much to learn from, from these guys. So it's just a great experience. It's been a blast so far, so, it's just, we're looking forward to finishing it out.
Is it hard, as someone, long hair bouncing around, kind of having, disappointment, not everything working out necessarily the way you want? Is it hard to keep motivated? Is it hard to keep your head up and keep, performing at the level you want to?
Me personally, this isn't, the first time that I've ever taken losses, so it's not something that, it's not something new. I'm not, I've taken a lot of losses in order to get to where I'm at today, and I'm sure a lot of these guys have too, but there are some days are better than others. Sometimes just the vibe and energy in practice is a little slow, and then sometimes you just need a reminder. You just need somebody to be like, hey, let's step it up. We still have games to play. We still have, a reputation to keep. Like that's, we still got things to do. And, it's usually just stuff like that that kind of just uplifts everybody and keeps everybody going.
What are you most proud of that you've accomplished this season, either as an individual or as a team?
I think as a team, I would say as a team, just the kind of the will to keep fighting. Because it's definitely there. I mean, just last game, you could feel like the energy and the passion, and it was just great. It was a great atmosphere. It was a great experience. It was cool. Last game was really fun to be around, and personally, just kind of knowing, what to do. Maybe the playing time, maybe not looking the brightest towards me at first, but just kind of knowing, just kind of being patient, for my time to come and to make things happen, and taking advantage of every opportunity.
You think you've earned that? You think you've earned more playing time now as you've gone along?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's not really up to me, but I do think so. I mean, I'm out here. I bust my butt every single day, in practice and throughout camp, but I'm here I like special teams, man. I make plays on special teams. That's how I think I'm going to get back to the league too. So special teams, I'm here for it all, man.
A couple here, I'll let you go. I appreciate it. Talk Cashman Field of it all. I mean, I don't want to get into all of it. There's been a lot of different stuff, but talk about the fans there, the Vegas fans that are there watching you guys. What's it like performing for them, and how's it been like playing in Vegas?
It's cool, man. I think that like the first game, it kind of got some negative attention because the field didn't look all, but I like it, man. It's a good, nice little atmosphere. It doesn't look like there's like a lot of people there, but I mean, 6,000, 7,000 people get in those stands, and it's nice, man. It's a cool, like last game was definitely the most like lit the stadium was, and people were excited and people were pumped up to be out there. And then we played a great game. So, no, I've been enjoying it. It's like, it's just great to play football again. I can't even, if there's 0 people in the stands, I'd still be pumped up,
Before I let you go, goals for the rest of the season. What are you hoping to accomplish? What do you want? I mean, obviously, get back and all of that, but just personally, headed here through the last, what do we got? 2-3 weeks. And what are you looking to accomplish?
Yeah, I want to return a punt. That's for sure. I want to get one. I want to take one to the crib on punt return. That's been my goal this whole season. So that hasn't changed, but, really just, I mean, I just want to just keep putting great stuff on tape. And as a team, I just want to win, man. I just want to win some games and just finish out strong, maybe shake up the playoffs a little bit for these other teams and see what happens.
Do you enjoy the XFL kickoff and special teams rules and everything else that goes along?
I do. It's a little different, but, there's definitely plays. I can see why, I understand kind of why they do it. But I do, I don't mind it. It's interesting, being on kickoff and having the guy 5 yards in front of you, right off the bat. And you kind of have a little shimmy shake in you, in order to get off it. So, and then punt return, I mean, it just kind of makes it way easier too, because I took a hit in St. Louis 2 weeks ago, but kind of like if it's a short hanger on a punt return, like you're returning it no matter what, when regular, those guys are flying down. So, but yeah, I like it.
Well, Matthew, I appreciate it today. The Vipers sent out, hey, we got media stuff. I said, what the hell is Mathew Sexton doing right now? So I'm glad we could get you on. Tracked you a long time, so I appreciate it. And thank you for spending some time today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Stay safe and good luck this weekend. Yeah, go shake up the North. Give the Battlehawks a loss. That would help out our Sea Dragons. So.
Oh, I got you, baby. I got you.
Well, I sat around a couple weeks ago. We've interviewed Amar Doman, owner of the BC Lions. We've had Matt Baker on the show. We've had Neil McAvoy, Nathan Borg, everybody else, Vernon Adams. I said, I need to get Coach Rick on. So I asked Matt Baker, and now we are here. Coach Rick Campbell, how are you doing, sir?
It's good. Good to be here. How are things today?
It's good. So I don't know if you know this. I have proclaimed the BC Lions. We are based in Seattle. I know you're from Spokane. We have proclaimed the BC Lions as America's CFL team. So you are, in fact, America's CFL coach. Are you okay with that delineation?
I'm good with that, especially when you're talking about the great state of Washington. So that's a good thing to be a part of. I think the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, has to stick together over here on I-5, the I-5 corridor. So that's a good thing.
I knew in the back of my mind you're from Spokane. I forgot that you went to Wazoo, so we won't tell my wife about that because that wouldn't make her happy as a UW fan.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a Huskies fan. I can't hide that. I'm usually pretty politically correct about things and positive, but I can't say that I'm down with the Huskies.
That's okay. We won't tell Dorothy. So how is this offseason obviously very different from last offseason? How is your life right now as we sit at the beginning of April?
It's coming fast. As you know, we're about 2 months ahead of the NFL. So we're going to be, I think we're on the field with the rookies on May 10th. So that's not too far away. We're looking at just over a month away. The good news is we have some more stability as far as all our coaching staff is back. The QB situation obviously is different with Nathan gone, but we had Vernon Adams here last year. So we know him, he knows us. So that's going to make that transition much more smooth. And then, we have the draft coming up. Our draft is just after the NFL draft, and we're going to be looking to add a couple pieces for the season, and we'll be excited to get going.
Did you like the new draft format? I've heard, we're obviously in the States, but a lot of controversy that it wasn't streamed, but it was this big multi-day and supposedly giving you guys more looks at players.
Yeah, it's good. It actually is a good thing. It lets guys be football players a little bit more. So there's more drill work. They actually got to sit in a classroom and learn something and then implement it on the field. So I think it just gave you a good look at all fronts, and that some guy doesn't slip through the cracks. You always hear about guys, whatever football league it is, from the NFL on down, about, where did this guy come from? How did he slip through the cracks? And usually it's because it's so geared on testing, which is important, but also I think you get the other aspect of it too. And so we're hoping it just uncovers a couple more guys that may have fallen through the cracks. So it was good. I can't speak on the streaming thing. That's not my field. But otherwise, I think we're on to something really good, and I think we'll keep tweaking it and go from there. In terms of developing and finding that new talent, and obviously we cover all the other leagues here in the States with the XFL and the USFL. We talked with Coach Jones here a couple months ago in the offseason. Do you think you guys need to do more work now up in Canada to be scouting players, whether in the States or in Canada, and kind of trying to get your eyes on them ahead of time? Yeah, I mean, we put a ton of work. Basically half our roster is Canadians. So, we put a ton of work into both. So, we have a set of scouts that are constantly looking in the U.S. and then we do a whole bunch of homework. We get all our players initially through the Canadian draft, so we spend a ton of time on that, and it's really your lifeblood of how you have success up here. So, we'll continue to work on that. In terms of what you guys are looking to add this year, obviously, like you said, the quarterback situation, all of that, and a lot of re-signees. But where do you think the deficiencies are you're looking to fill? We're always looking there's always going to be 2 or 3 guys. Same thing happens with the Seahawks or whatever it is. There's always 1 or 2 or maybe 3 guys that stand out, that are rookie guys that no one saw coming that become fan favorites. So we're always looking for those couple guys to add to our core base. And then we need depth, special teams. That's part of the reason our draft is so important, is that those roster spots, we dress 45. So those roster spots of 40 through 45, that they're as strong as possible and that they're big special teams contributors. In terms of building this year, like you said, with Vernon, and we figured out the Nathan Rourke of it all. And once you knew it was going to be Vernon, how confident are you in him, both kind of on the field, and then especially I think where he excels is that locker room leader, right? Is kind of the leader of men. But what do you think of Vernon as the player and as the man? Yeah, he's been great to work with. I obviously I'd met him, and I knew who he was and all that. I had never worked with him before. But working with him has been fantastic. I think it's been a really good fit. he came in here and it was a tall task. Nathan was lighting it up and having great success, and he was able to come in here and assimilate himself in and led us to, I believe, a 4-2 record in the regular season, which was a tall order, and he did it. I think it's been a good fit. He looks like a very motivated guy. Our offensive staff is the same, and our coordinator is the same. So he's going to know the playbook and understand what we're doing going into training camp. I think nothing of that can help. Nothing. It'll help him. So that's good. And we have a pretty good core coming back on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm excited about it. I know he is, and we feel lucky we were able to acquire him last year.
What was that like? I couldn't imagine being in the office or the field. Like, Nathan goes down, and then we have more injuries, and we're bringing in Vernon. Like, was that panic? What was that like as kind of the head coach there?
Yeah, no, we thought we had a good team, and we wanted to leave no stone unturned. Like, we didn't want to, throw in the towel and say, poor us. And when we did have a few injuries. And so we had some key injuries, but we had guys step up and were able to acquire a couple people, which, we wanted to put all our chips in, and, we made it to the game to go to the Grey Cup and didn't quite get it done. But, we think if we work hard and do all those things that we can play with anyone in this league. And, like I said, we're looking forward to the future.
In terms of the West here, and we're seeing the movement, right? And Saskatchewan's kind of re-upping, and obviously Winnipeg and everything else. How challenging is the CFL West right now? Where do you guys view yourselves?
It is really tough. I mean, it's every team in the West presents big challenges, and that's part of where we had success last year. Is we were able to win. We won 2 games in Saskatchewan and 2 games in Calgary, which really helped propel us to a home playoff game. So all those games are big in the West, and it's going to be no different this year. And most of the teams you play 3 times, so it's an automatic tiebreaker. That third game. So they're all big. For whatever reason, the West and the CFL has been really strong in the regular season for the last several years, and we expect nothing different. Winnipeg's got a bunch of guys coming back. Calgary's always good, and then you got Saskatchewan and Edmonton trying to build. So it's going to be we have to be at our best, but I know our guys are looking forward to it.
Yeah. Do you just internally focus on that? Are you peeking over the curtain at what everyone else is doing? Like, how do you approach that?
No, you got to worry about yourself. So especially as you get into training camp, is you just want to make every day count. We only play 2 preseason games, so it's really imperative that we make all the days of training camp count and get ready to go. And focus on yourself, focus on improving. It's a long season. We have an 18-game regular season, so we always talk about you're running a marathon, not a sprint. So you want to just make sure you're getting better each day and try to put wins in the win column and be there when November comes around. So we'll really work on us, and then see how good we can be, and then see how we stack up against everybody else.
At the end of last season, in Winnipeg, losing there, how it just was a crazy season. I mean, for a couple of the CFL teams, obviously Alouettes kind of had a lot going on, but with BC and Nathan and Vernon and the injuries, like, what was that like? And the season finally ends and you're there, and I felt like we were competitive, but it never felt like Nathan was all the way back, right? What was that whole experience like?
I think it's going to be good for us in the long run. Winnipeg's the measuring stick right now in this league. They've been to the championship game 3 years in a row, which isn't easy to do. And then playing on the road in their place with their crowds really loud, and literally in the 4th quarter, you couldn't hear a thing. So it's a lot of adversity to face, but those are the things you grow from, so that you're in those situations in the future. You can say you've been there, done that before. So I'm hoping that it'll help us and try to get over that hump to win the West.
Yeah, I don't know if it's better or worse, where it's like you kind of who the enemy is, who you're kind of gearing up to face. I don't know if that's easier of like, hey, this is who we need to take down. We need to build a team to kind of beat Winnipeg, or it's a weird time, and we're obviously new to covering the league, but to have such a dominant team here for the last few years.
Yeah, they've been the class of the league the last 3 years. So, we've been trying to build each year, which we have been, and we think we're right there with them. They beat us 2-1 in the regular season as far as the games we played. And then we had that playoff game, which came down to the fourth quarter. But they have a lot of veteran guys and veteran coaches that, they know what they're doing. And, we think if we can keep building and keep working hard, then, we can get to where we want to go.
Who are you excited to see kind of grow this year on the team?
I'm trying to think of names on the spot. We always talk about a big thing is we have a lot of American guys that come up here and they're playing It's still football, but there's nuances to the CFL. So it's fun watching those guys coming out of year one that are going into year 2 or year 3 that really get a feel for the motion and the 12 guys on the field and all those things. So I'm really looking forward to us as a team just growing. We thought last year was our first year of really having a solidified base of players and coaches, and we were able to get some traction, and we want to keep that going as a group.
It was so funny. I just remember off season last year, and you guys were rolling with Nathan, and all I hear is everyone like BC's crazy, and this is such a gamble, and this is it's gonna flop or fail, kind of whatever. And then coming out the gate, just incredible. Was that vindicating? I mean, obviously you don't care what the media critics say, but just knowing like we had our guy, we were right. Like we kind of had our strategy in place, and just I think you proved a lot of people wrong last year who really doubted BC.
Yeah, we were quite confident that Nathan could have success. I couldn't have predicted the numbers he'd put up or things like that, but do I think we could win with him? Absolutely. Most importantly, I think our players believed we could win with him. So our previous year, Mike Riley, who's a veteran quarterback, was dealing with an elbow issue, so he didn't practice very much. He practiced sparingly during the week just because that needed to be monitored. So Nathan got a ton of reps with our first group in practice and got some playing time. So we had a pretty good idea. You never know until it's a game, but we had a pretty good idea that Nathan was going to be a good player, and he proved us right. And I think he's going to continue to do that wherever he goes.
Just a couple questions before I let you go. I appreciate your time. Obviously, differing situations with McLeod here going to the USFL from the Argos and Nathan here going down to the NFL. But is that a concern now? We always hear a lack of quality quarterbacks in the CFL. And I mean, even as much as I love Vernon, seeing him bounce around and we're Saskatchewan and everyone's trade, like, is that a concern moving forward years to come? Like keeping the quality of quarterback play in the CFL healthy?
Yeah, you always want to have good quarterbacks in any league. That's how leagues work, is when the quarterbacks are good. If we're losing players to the NFL, which we're not going to compete against the NFL, we know that. It's just a different animal when it comes to money and all that. But if we're losing guys to the NFL, that's a good thing. It means we're doing a lot of things right, and that we have good players in this league. So that part, the Toronto's quarterback, Bethel Thompson, I think was just a specific family situation where he just needed to do something family wise. So I think that's a little bit of an anomaly. I still think the CFL, if you're not playing in the NFL, the CFL is the place to play quarterback for multiple reasons, for talent level, money, all those things. The CFL is still the place to play if you're a quarterback and it's not in the NFL. So, we just want to keep putting a good product on the field and keep trying to grow things up here. We're growing our fan base, and we think we're on the rise. And so, we'll just make this as good a place as we can to play. And you're right that we got to keep attracting quarterbacks, because that's what makes football leagues go.
Well, I'd also put stability in that, stability of, the CFL and allowing players to come up there, quarterback or otherwise, if you want to talk about, pros compared to the other leagues, right?
Yeah. And then, like I said, there's a lot of pressure up here to win. There's a lot, just, we have a tradition and fan bases and people pay attention to it. So there's a lot of things that can build guys to be ready to go to the NFL. And, I think if you ask a guy like Nathan Rourke, I think he'd say his experience up here was fantastic as far as him developing as a quarterback. So, that's about all I can say about that.
Last question. You said, you're building excitement up there, and obviously we've had Amar Doman on, and here his second kind of full season of having the reins, and you were hearing all these new things. How nice is that? Beneficial is that as a head coach to have ownership there that really believes in the team and kind of including the fan base and kind of everything else he's working on?
Yeah, it's awesome. He's a local guy. He's from here, lives here. Cares about the community, all those things that matter. And so I think when the fans feel connected to the team, not just on the field, but as part of the community, I think that's where the sweet spot is. And I think that's where we're getting to. And so we feel very fortunate to have Amar. He's been awesome. And we're really working hard to, like I said, to make sure we're totally connected to the community. And people down there should come up to games. It's not very far. I have tons of friends from college and people that still live in the United States that come up to games up here, and they always talk about how much fun it is and all that stuff. So it's a good experience to come up here and check out a game.
Yeah, obviously excited for this summer, and then certainly excited for here coming up next year, hosting the Grey Cup and all that. That will be exciting as well here and everything else. So, Coach Rick, I appreciate it. It's been a long time overdue for our listeners, but thanks for coming on the show.
Go Lions, go Cougs.
Now you're gonna have fighting words. Thanks so much. Huge special thanks to all of our guests for coming on today. Like I said, really appreciate Bill's extended time coming on, a long time kind of diving into all of the, sustainability of spring football, TV ratings, and the business model with Bill. Super special appreciative for that. Josh Lewin taking the time. I know Josh has been traveling and dealing with his XFL stuff and his other work and family stuff. So really appreciate Josh. Eric Eager, as always, taking the time. Eric is a wealth of knowledge. Tried to get him on more often if possible, but I know, he's busy talking, pro NFL football and everything else. But special thanks to Eric. And then obviously Mathew Sexton. I tracked him all the way back to the Spring League. Was great to get him on and kind of educate him on the history of the Aviators. What are the Hughes? Well, the Hughes, it was the Howard Hughes before the Aviators. Longtime spring football fans know that. And then, like I said, special thanks to the BC Lions and Rick Campbell, Matt over there for setting that up. So really, like to get CFL talk every week if I can on here. And why not talk to the head coach of America's CFL team? So thank you so much to Rick and everyone. Like I said, a live show on Tuesday, not Monday next week. And then we will have a special live USFL kickoff preview, kind of all that stuff on Friday, finalizing all of that. And I will be tweeting out and posting all of the guests as I can. That should do it for me today. I hope this isn't too long of an episode. Busy running, recording this in between shoots and everything else. A busy week for me, but we will be in sunny Las Vegas next week. So take care, like and subscribe as always. Hope you guys have a safe weekend, and God bless.